Hey, g'day guys, it's Calvin from the Cartoon Company in New Zealand. This particular video has kind of got two purposes. One of them is to communicate with the customer who's getting this loom setup that I'm doing. And two, to show you a little bit that goes on when you're swapping the wiring over on a 1UZ. In this case, we're doing an early model 1UZ into a Surf KZN 130 four-wheel drive. And the man has done some of the work with stripping the loom from the Surf, and he's done a really good job. A lot better than most people that I see. So he's taken that bit, which is the engine part of the loom, and he's pulled out all the bits, but he did send it down to me. Oh, hey, there we go. And he's left the four-wheel drive part, which is perfect. I've put some tape on that, and I've come up to about the back of the engine. That was where it split off from the engine harness. And we've got this big long length here. With the way that it sits in a Surf, this effectively becomes a little bit long. So I'm considering whether I just shorten it up a little bit. Otherwise it can just have a little bit of a curl in it. A couple of things that he did include was the wipers. He'd cut that out. Fortunately, you can see the colours here. And I'm pretty certain, just from memory of doing these, that those ones are going to be wipers. I do happen to have my own hand-drawn scribbles. Now, if I'm selling wiring instructions and I do have something like this for a Surf, for example, then I give them away for free. Grey plug, good, and wiper, blue black, wiper, a blue. So we've got them listed, wiper and the white plug. Let's have a quick look. Blue in pin 4, that's that one. My one has pin 3 being empty, whereas this one's actually got a wire in it, and there are some differences. Then I've got, let's see, we've got something in pin 10. We've got something in pin 9, actually. Pin 9, it says it's wiper. 17, it's wiper. And let's go with 23, shall we? 23, wiper. So I was correct, those four there are wiper. So I can put them back in. And Toyota did something funny. They made this wiper loom massively long. So I'll sort that. And the other one that I found in the box was this one, which is the front diff. So the front diff is going to be reintroduced as well. And that one is actually going to be too short. With the 1U, I try to make it a little bit longer. On this particular job, I'm not integrating the four-wheel drive harness in with the engine harness. I've chosen to keep it separate. That is going to cause one problem as far as going through the grommet. But the man is going to solve that. He'll come up with a solution. Now, he sent me a number of different wiring harnesses. Let's see what he sent me, shall we? So he sent me this setup here, which is a stock loom. It's been previously run. It's not very pleasant. It's got all these big cables and stuff in it. I think whoever wired it was wiring houses previous, or maybe that could be 7-pin very poor trailer cable, but it's really disgusting. So the answer for that loom is the rubbish bin. I'll pull the ECU apart and see if the caps are leaking, but they probably are. Pretty normal for them to be leaking. So we're not running any standard harness. So the next harness he sent me was this one. And I got it out of the box. And I looked at it and went, I got a feeling I've seen this before. And it's got this crazy loop. As you can see, it's like a necklace. It literally does a full loop of the engine. And that didn't take me long to work out, because we also had an alternator plug on the left hand side where the air conditioning normally is, and I know exactly where that had come from. I've seen this loom before, and I built a new loom to replace it. I sent it back to the customer, put it on Trade Me, and he sold this with the ECU. Fortunately though, it was sold pretty much for the price of the ECU. The loom was free, which is fortunate. I'm not going to send it back to the customer. I've got to find a way to destroy that, and I think I know just the way. We can't put these in a hole, we can't bury it, we can't burn it, but we can feed it to the goats, because those things will eat anything. Hanging here, I've actually already got a brand new loom in braid, looking that lovely. So we're going to fit that up soon, and we'll give it a test run and explain how to fit that for the customer. Running an early model Gen 1 version 5 Link. So what I'm going to do with this one now, I'm going to cover it, and I'm going to pop the wipers back in, and then I'm going to build a connection for the likes of that one, which is the water temp. There's water temp, and build a little loom to go from this one over to the engine harness. Making sure that the factory loom is all stripped out properly for the four-wheel drive system, for the wipers, for the functions of the vehicle that you want to remain is very important. Often there is that water temp, often there is the oil pressure. All those things need to be done correctly so they still work. And then the truck still works like it's meant to work. It's really nice that this customer has stripped this loom correctly, and it's all really easy for me to follow. It does help I had the diagrams. I normally confirm that my diagrams match the loom before I strip it, but I do have the two options, the two main options for a KZN 130 right here to work with. That makes it a bit easier for me. It was all covered in oil and grease and crap, so I took it out the back and water blasted it as my first step. So work to do for me. We'll come back once we've got this sorted and under control, and we'll do some testing and checking and make it all work. I've been hammering into this loom, sorting some stuff out, deciphering, and it's really important just to double check everything. And I keep saying this, and I still have guys that aren't double checking stuff. Double check, check, double check everything you do. Do the job, test it, check it again when it's running. I had a little discussion about the front diff wiring, and I had it all ready. Well, no, it's because I plugged it in. So we're going to use our imagination here. There's the front diff wiring. And you can actually see here, this plug is the same as that plug there. So what you've got, and the plug that was missing, so we had this plug that was attached in here, and that was the length it was, but that won't be long enough to get down to the front diff, because on the 1KZ, so we had this piece of cabling, and there's the plug it plugged into, and then it ran down through the loom to buy the starter motor, and that's where the second piece of diff plugged in. So it actually went through another section, or other. So it went through another It went through this section of wiring harness before it plugged in and went to the front diff. Of course, now it has a V8 in there. It's no longer an intake manifold on this side. It's got hot stuff, an exhaust manifold. So we're going to extend this piece of loom, the bit that goes to the ECU. Extend it, put some heat-proof sleeving on it, run it down. Aaron will sort it as it goes into the truck. Another interesting piece in here that was missed is this one here. It's a green yellow wire, and that's the oil pressure switch. I've got to remember when I'm working on different surfs that they have the oil pressure going in different places. So if it's an LN series, it's on the right hand front by the battery. There's a connector there, but on the KZs it comes inside to one of the main body plugs. Again, homemade scribbles. We've got it here. In this case it's a green yellow wire, so that's oil pressure. And that only leaves the earth in here, and then the park neutral switch, or the neutral start switch. So I've got to sort that as well. So that comes to this little piece of loom here. The glow plug relay. There's the main start cable in here. Here it is here. And then this one here is a start trigger. So that needs to be installed as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this one here as the main power supply for the relays and fuses in the cabin. And then it'll be fused on the glow plug circuit, kind of solving some problems. And we'll integrate the start cable into my wiring as well. At the same time, we need to get voltage, battery voltage, to the starter motor. So I whipped up this cable here. This is heat proof. It's heat proof, so no problems there. And so it can go under the manifold or around the engine bay. It's 2 meters long, so it's actually a little bit longer than we need to be. But of course, it can be cut off. And in this bag, there's some extra crimps and some shrink wrap. Plus there's the little booty. So if anything does drop under that intake manifold, hopefully it's going to stop anything shorting out under there. You know how I said you've got to check every time? Double check. Have a look at this. So I rewired the plug for the front diff. And I went to plug it in. And the wires were wrong. But I know I have this right. But look at this. Red, yellow. Green, white. It swaps. So the red goes to the green, and the green goes to the red. You can see that pretty clear. And then we come to the bottom. There's the red. It goes back to the green. Green goes to the red. They're backwards. So if I bypass that, it doesn't work. It's now wrong. So I have to just flip some wires around. I don't think it would matter because it goes to, that's a switch and that's a speed sensor. So I don't think it would actually matter too much, but I'm going to get it right. Just a good reason why we double check. Righto, I have a loom and it's finished. We've got the engine loom done. If required, there is a starter loom. If you need it, Aaron, just let me know. Okay. I've also got some spare alternator looms if you require it as well. That one's for another job, but I've got spare. See, I got plenty of them with either the oval or the round plugs. With this little loom that goes to the front diff, so you can fit that. We've got this long wire that's heat proofed, which is now set up that goes to the front diff wiring. That's easy, eh? But this one that goes to the wipers, because you kind of need wipers, windscreen wipers. This is where the main power comes in. And there's a blue wire, okay, so just keep an eye on that one. The big white wire is the main power supply into it. The red wire, or it's black-red there, but it's red at the other end, that is your start trigger. So they enter the cabin. There's your start trigger. There's your main power supply. They plug onto that. Start in. There's that one. Now there's this one. This is the ignition input from, and that's from the reverse lights. Not ideal. I would prefer you to use it from the third plug that goes into the ECU. Okay. I'll give you some diagram, but you can use that one. Just confirm it does have 12 volts on cranking and on key on. And this one, funny enough, will plug into that one. You can't get it wrong. And these are great. They all flow 70 amps. That's fantastic. And then there's this one. And funnily enough, this one plugs into the engine loom. It's got oil pressure and engine temp in it. Over here, these will just plug in. And this stuff should just work. We just got to watch the cranking, because see this one here? That's normally like a start trigger. And it's normally got another feedback wire up above it. So those two linked normally is for the starter motor. Because you'd already been in here, I couldn't confirm that. And there was a wire in this hole. There wasn't a wire in that hole there. So just keep an eye on that. We'll work on that. But I've made this jump wire if we need to jump between them and make that work. Somehow you've got to integrate the grommet from the other loom. I think it's going to be a split the side of it. It's going to go through the firewall about where that zip tie is. And then this runs along the back of the engine and down the transmission or under the gearbox, right down to the four-wheel drive, speed sensor, they plug in, reverse lights, that stuff should all work. So that's all simple. That's sort of its own system, but that should work quite nicely for you. And then, of course, we've got the engine harness. So here we have the engine harness. There's the grommet. So as I said, we might end up trimming it, cutting the side of it to get all that other stuff through. I don't know what grommet was on the truck. No grommet was in the bag, so they generally get a bit ugly, the surf ones. And these do just fit. They're a little squeezy, but they do fit in. I think it'll look right if you trim back through here and down the side, super glue back together. So this loom goes on the engine, of course. Now, there are a few instructions that come with it. Mount the igniter on a heatsink, and there's some silicone fluid that helps the heat transfer. This one I have, of course, done the throttle body reverse. There's this stuff here. You pretty much can't get it wrong. There's this wire here, this plug here, and it plugs into that and pretty much works. So that's all good there. Now you will notice in this plug, there's a couple of wires, like see that one there? Comes from the relays, but it doesn't come out the other side. Same as over here. And that's so if you ever upgrade, this here is a standard set of relays and fuses, okay? Standard setup. That's for your fan. That's for your fuel pump. Maximum 18 amps on either of them, okay? Or on both of them. Yep. This is ignition in. So either from by the ECU or the one I've put in from the reverse lights. And this is start in. No start relay because there's one in the truck already. So it's got a big fuse in there. And then that's actually a start output there. Goes over there for if you're running a later model ECU that has a start trigger to it, then the wire's already there. So as I said, this is a standard setup. So if you do upgrade the ECU, you don't have to go redoing that. It'll work. I have included idle speed if you would like it. So I've got that fella there. If you want one, we can put that in there as well. I think the very best thing I can do here, can slam it onto the, oh, there's another wiring loom on old Yeller. Let me test that other wiring loom, get it off, get the wiring loom off, and then we'll come back, we'll put this one on it, run it up, check it's all good, call it a day. Time to test it. We've got the loom onto the engine. You notice the throttle body's on the wrong side. I'm sure this is the right job for the throttle body this way. Loom comes down, it needs to be secured, generally with a P-clamp. Just there. Factory suppressor, I always run them. Helps with electrical interference on the cam and crank sensors. And with the Link ECUs, we only run the one cam sensor, which is the left hand, same size as the crank. This is running this factory coils. That coil is plugged in. Water temp sensor and the EFI temp sensor are in. The cold start isn't used if that's on the engine. Injectors. Now the wiring loom can be secured either just in there, it can be zip tied up here, or it can go on the inside and loop around. The 2-channel igniter needs to be mounted to an aluminium heatsink. On the firewall generally, it's sort of, it's designed to go up here like this, like on an imaginary firewall. I fitted up an idle speed control unit. It doesn't need to be run. It can be blanked off like this one, but I do prefer to run the idle speed because overall it does make a nicer job with the idle speed control unit. There is the wiring loom that goes into the starter motor. It's got that connector on it. Hopefully that's the right one. It's had a later model starter. We can change that connector. And there's a plug at the back here, this one. This 8-pin plug, that is a spare. If we wanted to add a fuel pressure sensor or temperatures or anything extra, they're in there. Allows for upgrades nicely. External map sensors could be put in that as well. Air temp sensor. I prefer to mount them in the throttle body like that, but it can be mounted anywhere in the air intake. To power it all up, it's real simple. We plug the ECU in. So this is an old Gen 1 Link, and it was a version 5, as designated on the back here. V5E, which had the air temp sensor on the back here. It also has the ability to put a wideband in, so I've put in this plug, which has got the wideband, power and an earth. So that can do like a Spartan or something like that wideband. This plug is extra. That's like that extra 8-pin on the back. Goes to this one. And knock sensors, because this ECU doesn't do knock sensors. This is our dash plug. Water temp and oil pressure are the two most important. There's an air conditioning wire and an earth. And one that goes to the ECU for the tacho. And one that goes to the igniter for the tacho. We then plug in the big Deutsch plug. So that's a 12-pin. Fairly standard set of relays and fuses, except it doesn't have a start relay. There's a start relay in the vehicle. And we power it up. Permanent battery power, which of course is coming from the gearbox loom, the harness, that's already in the vehicle. And then we power that up. And I get some earmuffs, these ones. Well, it starts. This is ECU. We don't know what the tune was in it. I think Brad actually originally, the last owner, had it dyno tuned, but I don't know about cold start or anything about it. Let's just see if I can keep it running for a bit longer. Didn't take too long to idle. As part of the deal with buying the ECU, the man got a new G1 serial link and a USB converter. So I'm going to get in and I'm going to plug in my laptop and check what's actually in this ECU, see what the tune's like. I'm running it on the tune that was in there. I haven't adjusted it for anything. I haven't set up the idle speed control unit. I haven't set up cold start. I've done nothing. It's running on the base numbers that were in it. I don't think it had an idle speed control unit when it was in the other vehicle. And actually these things are quite valuable now. So it actually makes it an even better deal, even though the loom was ugly. An ECU and the communication unit is... to buy those two items is well worth more than what the man paid for it. So, bit of checking, bit of setup, but that's almost done, ready to go back and be fitted up to the surf. I got in on the software, had a look at a couple of notes. You might not be able to see, but down here at the higher revs, it's actually getting less fuel than at idle. Probably suggests it's not very good. And the timing map is, yeah. They probably didn't tune it above 7,200 RPM, which is probably a good thing because the rev limit is set at 7,800 RPM. Yeah, that tune isn't very good.
Yes.
Sweet. Yeah. I happen to have a spare one of these old girls, and I'm going to plug it in and we'll see if this one's got a better tune in it than that one. We're probably at the limit of our temperature boards. Is that better?
Makes flames.
Makes better flames. Just going to let you know, when you're plugging in the serial port, do not have the ECU powered up. That'd be bad. We're back to Aaron's ECU. What I'm going to do is I'm going to throw both the files on a Google Drive, and that should allow us, he can choose which one he wants to use. I've tested it. I know I can get into it. It's all working like it should. I'm happy. It starts and runs. And then it'll need set up once it's on the vehicle anyway. So hope that's been helpful. We'll talk again soon. Catch you later. In this department, we've got a fan and a fuel pump. 18 amps is the maximum current draw of those two. Ignition in and start in. They're labelled on the top of the fuse box. If you want a start cable that runs to the starter motor, I've got them. 2 meters, 2 meters, heat-proof cable, heat-proof sleeving, and I've got alternator cables too. They're available. Just let me know if you need them.